Honorable members, distinguished guests, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I stand on the previous protocol of earlier in the day, acknowledging all dignitaries and VIPs. I'm greeting you all this evening and welcome to the Women 20 Summit. We stand here today celebrating a generation of women leaders who have been unafraid to challenge the status quo, who've held the line where others would retreat. A short poem before I start introducing our keynote speaker and guest of honor today. She walks through glass that once was ceiling, now shattered by her steady dealing. A tailored grace, she charts the course, a quiet storm, a steady force. Not loud, but firm, her voice commands. She speaks truth to power and holds it accountable. She leads with bravery and authority. Our keynote speaker for the day is a trailblazer and a history maker, a chartered accountant with over 2 decades of experience, which spans diverse areas, including auditing, consulting, corporate advisory, development finance, investment management, and skills development. She broke a 100-year-old barrier in 2020 by becoming the first ever woman to be appointed as the Auditor-General of the Republic of South Africa. Yes. Let's just clap for that. And I'm sure I'm not going to be out of line by saying that makes her a Woman 20 era woman. Not just occupying space, but dominating it. And we appreciate you for that.
Thank you.
Her leadership is defined by courage and tangible impact. She is the force behind the expanded mandate, giving her office teeth to enforce consequences for financial misconduct of more than 3 billion in financial losses to the state. She doesn't just check books, ladies and gentlemen. She is rewriting the standard of public accountability. Transforming audit findings into lived realities and proving that the highest form of leadership is service rooted in uncompromising integrity. Her commitment to service excellence, ethical leadership, contribution to the advancement of transformation has been recognized not only by me, not only by Women20, but by the presidents of the Black Management Forum, the African Woman Chartered Accountant, the Black Business Council, and the Association of Advancement of Black Accountants of South Africa, amongst others. Our keynote speaker for the day, for those who might not have guessed it, is none other than Ms. Tsakane Maluleke. It is a pleasure and an honor, ma'am. Can you please clap our hands and stand as she comes to speak? Can we stand and welcome her? Yeah.
Kind introduction. Thank you for doing all this. Thank you. Marukotso, thank you for that very kind and edifying welcome and introduction. I love being in spaces where women gather, women who are activist-minded. It becomes easily one of the most affirming spaces for any woman. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are, what you do. When we gather in this way, we are able to channel energies in a way that is indeed affirming. So thank you, Mwarakotso, for that very kind introduction as Program Director. I'd like to greet Prof. Nania Bolamula, the Head of Delegation and Co-Chair of W20 South Africa in 2025. All of the members of the Diplomatic Corps, the officers and officials of multilateral organizations that are represented here, all the donors, honored guests, ladies, and the few gentlemen that are here. A very warm greeting to all of you. I really am delighted to be among the women of the world, a very rare opportunity of the G20 being held on the African continent for the very first time. I want to thank you for this very kind invitation, Prof, for me to take part in this august gathering of women. One of many gatherings that are happening in our country as we are hosting and chairing the G20 for the year. I'm also pleased that we can be part of this critical conversation where your engagement group, all right, thank you. I'm pleased that we can be part of one conversation where your engagement group deals with a most important and critical issue on the economic empowerment of women and girls. Your theme of women in solidarity towards sustainable socio-economic development promises what will be a lively conversation, and I am expecting that we will come out with the most robust recommendations that will make sure that all of us remember the time we spent together in Johannesburg, South Africa in 2025, and that your recommendations will find expression in the work of the Sherpas and ultimately to the heads of state when they meet for the summit later this year. The invitation you sent to me alluded to the work that my office has been involved in generally, but also to the fact that in June 2025, so just a few months ago, we successfully hosted SI20, which was a summit much like yours, where we have an engagement group for supreme audit institutions. So AGs across the world call themselves supreme audit institutions. So we have a global forum that is SI20. And Site 20 brought together the heads of supreme audit institutions of G20 member countries. Now, so when I say Auditor General, you probably think of someone who wears grey shoes. I will deliver about my choice. When I say Auditor General, you probably think of men. And you probably think of people who are seized with calculators and debits and credits. And I'm fortunate to be part of a generation of leaders of supreme audit institutions that are debunking all these myths. Yeah. Not just the shoes, but the gender as well. But importantly, in the posture that they adopt in their work of auditing the public sector. Because what we know for sure is that it's important that supreme audit institutions be good at the debits and credits. It's important that they apply the science of auditing in completing their work, but probably even more important, that they adopt a posture where they unashamedly proclaim that they exist to add value to the systems of government and ultimately deliver value and benefits to the citizens of their respective countries. Now, as the chair of Site 20, I'm proud to lead an engagement group that sees itself as a strategic enabler of development. So not just debits and credits. We are clear that we are a partner to development. Yes, we're independent of government, but the work we do must be adding value into the process and the programs that will deliver benefits, that will deliver development in all of our respective countries. And how we do it is by contributing to practices, disciplines, behaviors, cultures that are going to ensure that every public resource that is available is being spent for the benefit of citizens. Through our work, when we audit, when we report, when we engage, we are clear that we are uniquely positioned to help governments make better decisions. And so that's what we do. We try hard through the work we do to ensure that we engage in a way that's going to have the consequence of having governments make better decisions, ultimately for development, for generations today, and ultimately for tomorrow. So our theme for the conversations we had in June 2025 here in Johannesburg dealt with infrastructure investments, because we know that investing in infrastructure is a priority for most governments around the world. They drive economic growth, but importantly, they help us deliver services, right? And we also were clear that another theme that needed our attention was on skills development, because our view is that if governments get good at the quality of spend that they make in developing skills and human capital, they're able to give young people the opportunity to be contributors and effective and responsible participants in their countries, so that today and tomorrow you have got citizens that have a stake in the economic and social development programs of their countries. Yes, I know we're quite ambitious, but that's what it is. But in many ways, it's about seeing Auditors General as adding value to economic justice. It's about making sure that we drive inclusion and access for all people. And if I look at your theme, I find resonance because you're about driving inclusion and access for women in the economy. You're about making sure that we discuss central points that deal with women in tech, women in women's healthcare, women in AI. I was quite thrilled to see that amongst your themes. And of course, well-being for women and girls and women in invisible economies. I think those are fantastically well-selected themes and focus areas that will help us shift the conversation, drive it forward, so that ultimately more and more women and girls benefit from a world that does embrace their ability to contribute effectively into the development of their countries. It's about developing human capital so that it realizes its full potential. It's about the ability of women being able to achieve their potential with the knowledge that they do, as history shows, with the knowledge that they are more likely to expand the scope that they have to include everybody and drive a concerted campaign for improvement. You all know this quote that says, when women thrive, their families, their communities, and economies flourish. Educated women often invest in their children's education, while financially independent women contribute to household stability and growth. And the benefits are far-reaching, touching every aspect of society. And that's a quote from the women reform movement. And I couldn't agree more. As we mark now 30 years since the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, which was the most comprehensive and visionary agenda ever for gender equality and the realization of human rights for all women and girls. It also happened in a world where it seemed the world was more attuned to hope rather than despair. And there's been some progress that we must own and acknowledge. And as the UN Women notes, countries have taken many steps forward towards gender equality and women's rights and empowerment. But we know, especially in this room, that endemic and systemic issues remain stubborn. Gender discrimination remains embedded in the structures of economies and societies, and it sustains wide and unjust gaps in power and resources, imposing a chronic constraint for progress on women's rights. And lately, in our world, there seems to be a drive against diversity and inclusion, which is sweeping what is called the developed world, and it is starting to find resonance with other converts in what is still the developing world. We live in a world where anti-rights actors are actively undermining long-standing consensus on key women's rights issues. Where they cannot roll back legal and policy gains that we've made altogether, we're seeing that they are trying to block and slow their implementation. According to UN Women, in its appraisal of progress, almost 1/4 of countries reported that backlash on gender equality is hampering the implementation of the Beijing Platform for Action. We're far from that world 30 years ago that seemed filled with hope rather than despair. I believe in this moment, we should choose again hope rather than despair. And that's why I believe that platforms such as W20 are so important and will continue to be important for a very long time. And your theme, I Am Because You Are, Women Shaping a Just Future, is absolutely relevant. And there was absolutely no hesitation on my part when I received the letter of invitation for this event, and I even brought you rain. Your theme talks to the interconnectedness of dignity, justice, and progress. And just like the Beijing Call for Action advocated, the South African Developmental Blueprint, the National Development Plan, called for eliminating gender inequality in the workplace and society. And for that, we remain grateful. Because as South Africa, we are a leader in representation. I'm not sure if you're aware of these statistics, that 46% of our parliamentarians are women in South Africa. That's raised quite well across the world if you look at the work of the Inter-Parliamentary Union. But there are still some concerning statistics, like the reality as painted out by a statistics agency. And by the way, the Statistician General is a Maluleke. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. That's just a side comment. Oh, no, he's not my husband. I know some people, sometimes I get asked, is the Statistician General your husband? No, he's not. He's a distant brother, but one I'm well fond of. So Statistics South Africa says that women still earn on average 30% less than men. And that should remain a cause for concern, because we know that equal work or equal pay for work of equal value should not even be a debate. In South Africa, we have the legislation that provides for that. What we've got to worry about together is giving effect to it through implementation, through monitoring, and through advocacy. Around the world, statistics are also not too hopeful. UN Women data for 2023-24 shows that women hold only 28% of managerial positions worldwide. Only 23% of cabinet ministers are women. the global economy forfeits US dollars to the tune of 10 trillion by not fully integrating women. And that's a study by McKinsey. 10 trillion US dollars lost because there's a choice not to properly give effect to the contribution of women. 41, now turning to academia because Prof is here and I know there are a number of academics here. In academia, 41% of researchers are women, but just 24% are in top academic positions. In the UN system, in 2022, women represented 44% of staff, but only 36% in senior leadership. So we have a great deal of work ahead of us still. As women, there is much that we can offer, even, maybe particularly when the world doesn't think so. We've proven that a just, better world is possible with women at the helm. In my role today, and in other roles where women have broken through barriers, I believe that we continue to prove that a just, better world is possible when women are at the helm. I am, we are, because of Charlotte Maxeke of South Africa, who taught us that education is a tool for liberation. I am, we are, because of Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala of Nigeria, who shows us that integrity and global leadership go hand in hand. And as you might know, she is the first African and first woman to lead the World Trade Organization. I am, and we are, because of Kamala Harris of the United States, who broke, yes indeed, who broke barriers in the highest corridors of power, the first Black and South Asian woman to serve as Vice President of the United States. I am, we are, because of Liberia's Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, Africa's first elected female head of state, yes. And she used her position to highlight failures of global governance from Gaza to Ukraine, showing how civilians, especially women and children, paid the highest price because of strife and wars. I am, we are, because of Toni Morrison, the Nobel-winning author who famously said, yes, and she famously said that the function of freedom is to free someone else, effectively urging us, each of us, to lift as we rise, always. I am, we are, because of Advocate Thuli Madonsela of South Africa, who reminded us that truth is a public good and it triumphs in the end. I am, we are, because of Benedita da Silva of Brazil, who rose from the margins to lead with courage, yes. And you know that she rose from the margins to lead with courage and compassion, being the first Black woman to serve as governor of Rio de Janeiro. And I am, we are, because of Kenyan Wangari Maathai, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, yes, who did phenomenal work on environmental advocacy. In fact, the movement she led got to us planting 51 million trees in Kenya. That's a legacy that we can all be inspired by. And I am, and we all are, because of each of these women that I mentioned. And perhaps let me not stop because I'm having such a great time with this. I am, we are, because of Christine Lagarde, who's the Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund. And she believes that tapping the huge potential of women can be a game changer in growing economies and reducing inequality. I am because of Dilma Vana Rousseff, the only woman to have held the Brazilian presidency until her impeachment and removal, which she called a coup d'etat. And removal or not, we cannot erase that she was there. And I am, and we are, because of Angela Merkel, who was the only woman to serve as German Chancellor. And the list goes on. There are many who are available to inspire us, especially when we seek hope in the sea of desperation. These women from the different corners of the world, from South Africa to the United States, from Nigeria to Brazil, from Kenya to Liberia, and all the way to Europe, they've all laid the foundation for a just future. not just for themselves, but for each and every one of us. We are because of their sacrifices, their foresight, their courage, and above all, their commitment to worthy causes, whether it is education, the environment, leading with their heart, and going out of their way to prove that women are just as capable of achieving greatness despite the obstacle put in their way. These leaders have each taught us, or at least their lives should teach us, that when we elevate and share our experience of womanhood, we inspire young girls to search for and find their purpose in life. It does not matter what our titles are, whether we are presidents or auditors general or entrepreneurs or caregivers, we are first and always women. We face common challenges: safety, dignity, emotional labor, and the constant need to prove our worth. There is an unspoken but well understood sisterhood that binds us. We know what it means to be overlooked, to be underestimated, and to rise despite all of this. When we extend a hand to another sister, it should be with this in mind, and not because we want to be the first and the last. We must be the first of many. I'm privileged to lead an organization that unashamedly prioritizes and creates space for women, and for young people in particular to realize their true potential. And yes, we are auditors, and that's our primary function. But let me tell you, one of the things that gives me the greatest pleasure when I focus on it, it is the work we do for and with young people. At the HSRC, the institution that I'm privileged to lead, we are one of the largest training organizations that produce chartered accountants, members of the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants. Maybe let me start. Yes, we are. Thank you. To place that into perspective, the CASA designation is the most trusted brand of accounting across the world. And so, yes, it is, if you know so. But because at the HSRC, all of us are quite clear. We may have been very few to begin with, but we are not going to be the last. So our institution currently is the third largest producer of new CAs, 300 in a year. And yes, and many of them women. In fact, yes, the majority women. Over the years, we've been able to have more than 2,000 people qualify, and 55% of those are women. Our work as the National Audit Office is to audit the systems that shape people's lives. We audit the institutions, departments, entities, or government institutions that have to deal with health, providing education, safety and security, law enforcement, social development, and other key sectors that are central to our economy. Through our work, we are deliberate about generating insights and sharing that information through quality recommendations, which if government implements, will start to have better quality of spend, better efficiency of delivery, and ultimately a better life for South Africans. It's work that has to continue. Some days it goes well, many days it doesn't. Our job, mine and my 4,000 colleagues, is to continue to do this work. And fortunately, we understand only too well why it's important and why it's urgent. And it is from this heart that we're able to generate this work all the time. Our job, we don't see as about delivering reports or even sound bites about irregular expenditure. We see our job at its core being about contributing to the improvement of lives of South Africans. We shine a light on where public funds fail to serve the people, and especially women and caregivers, because quite often they're the ones that rely more heavily on public service delivery. We do this with the belief that accountability is not just technical. It is something that has a real human impact. It also has a cost when you don't practice accountability. Gender equality is not a women's issue. It's a societal imperative. Absolutely. Men are essential partners in this journey, and I believe that men have a moral obligation to be gender justice champions. And that's why I'm pleased that there are some men in the room, because the conversation about the empowerment of women cannot begin and end amongst women alone. I often make this point. I'm here as the first female Auditor General because the men that came before me made it their business to create a moment where there would be a female Auditor General. They created space, they advocated, and they created routes for women to lead in the institution. And so what I'm very clear about is that men should be allies in our effort to drive empowerment of women. Because men are the ones who hold the power. They can enable change. They can use their influence to support gender equality and push for the right policies. They're the ones that can create opportunities for you and I. They're the ones that can sponsor and mentor us, whilst consciously working themselves out of these positions that have been for far too long ring-fenced for men. As Toni Morrison says, the function of freedom is to free others. Men have a responsibility to free women from the clutches of institutionalized oppression of women. Men should and can challenge biases and culture, and in doing so recognize and call out unconscious bias. They can call out micro inequalities, for example, things about who gets invited to leadership spots, who gets visibility when things really matter, and they're the ones that can drive change to organizational norms. It's also important for men who are already sitting at the seat of power to share that power and to create platforms where women can comfortably also take up space. We've got to make sure that indeed men remain our allies in this journey. Conscious and intentional mentorship and sponsorship of female colleagues, especially sponsoring them to succeed rather than being simple advisors. It's one thing for men to advocate and agree with us that gender equality is important, a different issue if we can get them to act on that word. All of this will succeed if there are supportive environments that promote flexibility, which take into consideration that women may have caregiving responsibilities and champion the design of workplace policies that allow for ensuring that safe and inclusive spaces are there for women to work, to lead, to speak. In diplomacy, men have a role of ensuring inclusive delegations and equal speaking space so that women are exposed to multilateral organizations and that they get the opportunity to represent with confidence. It's also important to recognize that the home environment is important, and where men can share responsibilities for caring within the home, it allows women the opportunity to pursue their own careers fully. So we can't do this alone. Data shows that in organizations where men actively support gender equality initiatives, there is better progress, and those organizations achieve stronger results. In fact, the UN Women has done research in this area. A just future requires men to use their influence and privilege to dismantle barriers that hold women back. Shaping a just future involves acknowledging that justice and progress must be economic, social, and diplomatic. It will thrive on the foundation of gender-responsive budgets and policies, where there is equal access to finance, to land, and to technology, where there is parity in leadership across political, corporate, and diplomatic spheres, where men and women partner to co-lead in building inclusive futures. And as I head towards closing, please allow me to take a moment to make the following call. We need to build institutions that see us not only as professionals or entrepreneurs, but as whole people. We need to actively shape the future where being a woman is not a barrier or an impediment, but rather it's a badge of honor. In whatever we do, in whatever industry we are in whatever position of power, position of trust that we have been placed in, we must never forget that we need to rise together, because that is what will positively shape the future that we all want to see, the future that we so richly deserve. Governments, the public sector, all have a responsibility, whether it's about gender responsive budgeting and governance, whether it's about policy delivery, or even investment in women's leadership and innovation. And I'll say it maybe one last time, men must step forward as allies and champions to shape women's leadership. And in the diplomatic world, those in charge must ensure that women are not only included, but also women are given the space to be agenda setters in global decision making. Together, men and women, we can shape a just future where every girl knows that her dreams are valid, where every girl knows that her voice, even when it shakes when she initially speaks, but she knows that her voice matters, where every girl knows that her tomorrow is limitless. I want to wish you a most successful series of deliberations. I'm looking forward to seeing your communique, and please count me as one of the champions that will ensure that space is given to attending to your communique. Thank you.
What a truly inspiring and insightful keynote address.
I'm depressed. I live in Washington, D.C., where Trump has crushed all the guardrails.
I'm just going to give them a few minutes.
Hope. For courage. Hope. Courage. Hope.
On behalf of Professor Nanya Bolamola, Women 20, and everyone here, I want to extend our deepest gratitude to you. Not only did you inspire us, you reminded us of the greatness of women that came before us. You stood here with grace and poise as you run your organization in stilettos, and that inspires me. So, and thank you for just the lovely speech and the inspiration. As we continue our work, we'll be relentless in our gender mainstreaming efforts, in our advocacy work, in the actions of gender equality. In your words, we have great work ahead of us. And a just world is possible. I am because we are, and we are because you are.
Yes.
Thank you so much, and thank you again. I would like to welcome Professor Nanya to come and just thank you for the lovely address. A few words, Prof.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. I am and we are because you are.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for accepting this information, this invitation. Thank you for sharing your love with us. And I deeply, deeply appreciate having met you today, having listened to you today, and I'm proudly South African at the moment.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Maybe let's turn to the camera, yeah? Thank you very much. I appreciate this. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We've come to the end of our program. Let's network, let's meet other women, and let's continue our work. Let's be relentless at it. As in her words, we have great work ahead of us, and it is possible. So let's imagine a world where we can say we've made progress in ticking the box. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a lovely evening.